What's up, everyone? I hope you're doing well. Welcome to another fun-filled episode of the Everything Went Black podcast. Welcome back, Ralph Schmidt, to the regular stream. Ralph and I have mostly been doing Patreon episodes together, so this is a bit of a return for one of my best friends, Ralph Schmidt, to the normal feed. And today it's sort of a part two of an earlier episode. A while back we covered Fields of the Nephilim, one of our mutually favorite bands. And there's a small coda to the career of Carl McCoy, the frontman and founder of Fields of the Nephilim. For a few years, there was the band broke up. There was a little hiatus that went on, and the rest of the band continued on as Rubicon. And Carl formed a band called the Nephilim, and they released one record called Zoon. And that's a bit of a sleeper. It kind of went under the radar for a lot of people. And on this episode, Ralph and I discussed that record, its importance in the catalog of Field of the Nephilim, and also its importance in the influence that it has extended throughout the metal scene. And in my opinion, it's a very unique record, and we go into all the reasons why. But before we do that, I'd like to thank all of our other podcasting brethren. You know, it's a really cool group of guys. We support each other's shows. We like each other's posts. We share all of our episodes, and there's a ton of mutual respect out there. And to start off the week, of course, on Monday, we have Horror Wolf 666, brought to you by Brandon Legion. It's a horror podcast, but instead of what we do over on Necromaniacs, Brandon is an interview-based podcaster, and he's got a lot of excellent guests, known filmmakers as well as up-and-comers, and it's a really cool show. It's a good way to start the week off. On Tuesday, we basically have the only music show that I listen to, and that's Into the Necrosphere, featuring my brother, Jackie Schmidt. And it's, if you're into black metal, death metal, anything extreme, that's definitely the show for you. On Wednesday, we have Everything Went Black, which is what you're listening to right now. And on Tuesday, I return with Mike Scandato and Jeff Kashid to discuss all things new and old in horror movies, and that is the Necromaniacs podcast. Going to the weekend, we have our brother Carl Hikara and his podcast, Soul Knocks, which appropriately comes out on Sunday, the Day of the Lord. And he discusses all things dark, occult, and esoteric. Another newer member of our group is Cheyenne from Trivax, his podcast, Iblis Manifestations. And there you go. That's pretty much all you need to do. Check out these shows, and you'll be all set. Hey, everyone. It's been a while since I've had you back on the actual normal stream of this show, Ralph. So welcome back to the Everything Went Black normal show. So how's it going?
I'm good, Mike. Good to be back in here. Hi, everybody. I hope you have missed me. At least some of you reached out and said, like, you want my voice back on the main show because you're too lazy and too cheap to like buy the Patreon for $1 a month. So plugs to all of you out there who support the Patreon. But like no shit aside, it's good to be back on here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, totally. It's we're going to talk about a record that we've been talking about for quite a while. And so I'm excited to be doing this finally. And over the last few months, I've been spending a lot of time with this record, you know. But before we get going, how was the show? You guys just played a bunch of shows.
Yes, right. We had we have 5 shows down in total now with Ropes of Night, and last year we played 2 of them, and then it's a bunch of shows got canceled or were canceled because one of us was ill and shit. But now we actually had like 3 weeks. So 3 weeks of shows back to back. We're like not like 3 weeks, but like 3 weekends with one show each, which is a lot for like us as a newer band, and given the situation that all the bands in the world are touring right now, and I can literally go like to 3 shows every day. Um, but yeah, we played like Friday of last week. We played with our friends Yellow Eyes from New York and Sun Worship from Berlin. So we played with 2 black metal bands, and we did really well. I think like the 70 people that showed up, because it was at the same time like 30 minutes away. Watain and Abath, Tribulation, and Bilza
Oh
played.
wow, man. Yeah.
So like 60 people was still a good turnout, and we were like, okay, let's see if this music also works for black metal people. But I think all the people that came to that show really like, they are into Yellow Eyes and Sun Worship and like the more undergroundy stuff, and people dug it. And you had like even the hardest black metal like shake their ass to our songs at some point. It was kind of cool to see that. And so yesterday we got invited to play with LA's She Wants Revenge, not to be confused with She Passed Away. Yeah. Do you know She Wants Revenge, Mike?
No, I am totally unfamiliar with them, and so yeah, tell me what are they all about? Apparently, they're popular, right?
Yes, and that was the same thing that like I wasn't too familiar with them too, because when our booker, like, he's the promoter for the show, but he's the booker for Ultha too, and he asked us like, so there's this band playing, and we need to support. Do you guys want to play with them? And we're like, okay. So they're like, yeah, She Wants Revenge. I'm like, oh, cool, that's that Turkish band. And he's like, no, that's She Passed Away. But like, that's this band is She Wants Revenge. Like, oh, there are 2 bands with like almost the same name. Um, and then I'm like, yeah, let me check that out. And I'm like, She Wants. Okay, so I typed it in on Instagram's like 150,000 followers. I'm like, what the fuck?
Damn.
And it's like Facebook almost the same amount. I'm like, really? What the hell is that? Then I spoke to a friend who DJs here at this bar that I also DJ now and then, and he's also really like into dark waves and post punk. And he's like, "Oh fuck, you're playing with them? They're awesome. The first record ruled. I have no idea what they did after that." I'm like, "Okay." And from what he told me, these guys are have been around for a long time, and they come from, I mean, they're from LA now, but they come from the hardcore punk scene. And he said like they used to be playing with bands like Mile Marker, Cursive,
Mm.
and these kind of bands.
I
So
like
like the
Mile Marker
Settle
a lot.
Creek.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, me too. I always loved them. So it was like that, the Faint and this kind of like Radio 4 from that time frame. It's like, okay, I must have heard of them, but I really can't remember it. So I dug deep, and like the first record is actually pretty cool. It's like drum computer, it's this guy singing. It's really monotonous and repetitive, but it's kind of like a more stale version of the early Interpol stuff,
Oh,
but it's
okay.
actually pretty cool. So it's a decent listen to. I like the first record, Driving Car, but they've got like a diehard fan base, like from like the people in my age here. All of them knew them, um, but it still like doesn't explain to me like why is there 150,000 people liking them. And so we played that show yesterday, and like when I watched videos on YouTube, like people went apeshit screaming like it's a fucking boy band. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And so I talked to them, because it was the same way yesterday. People were super into it. They were super into us, which was great, and played to like almost 400 people, biggest show we've played so far. And I spoke to the singer and the guitar player afterwards, and they said like that one of their songs, their big hit from like the earlier records, was featured in one season of American Horror Story.
That'll
So a
do
lot
it,
of people
man.
must,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of people must have Shazammed it, and through that, Billie Eilish obviously found them. And now that song that is in American Horror Story is one of the 3 songs that always plays in stadiums before Billie Eilish goes on stage. So she must have had like a ritual like Iron Maiden have, where they always have that one song playing before they go on stage. And one of these songs must be like the She Wants Revenge song. That's why they are so insanely popular
Oh
and
wow.
have an audience of like 50% old goth people, like in full gear. And the rest was like young teenage girls. I'm like, okay, this is a weird mixture, but it was a fun show. These cats were super nice, and we had a great talk with them. They gave us kudos. They all watched our set while we played and like talked us up like, oh, this song was cool, and I like the pedal you use, and I like it when bands are still like this, even though they're successful. Yeah, that was a good evening.
That's awesome, man. That's cool. I'm glad to hear that, man. That's you know, pretty killer,
Yeah,
you know. And
yeah.
so you know, I'm gonna announce this now. Is I'm gonna be at the Unholy Passion Fest this year. So everyone out there who's listening, if you're in Germany and you're planning on going to this festival, I will be there. Ralph, you'll be there.
Oh
Some
man,
other friends will be there, and
yeah,
we're gonna rage. So
yes,
I'll have
dude,
an
that's
opportunity
awesome.
to see you guys perform.
Oh man, that's rad. So you booked flights or you have flights?
Not yet, but I'm gonna get them today
All right.
probably. Yeah, but I mean, it's
Oh
definitely
man.
it's I'm definitely coming. Just I had to move a
Uh,
couple things around on my schedule, and that's done. And the flights part is easy. So you know,
that's fucking awesome, dude. Like that's one of the best news in forever, man.
yeah,
Yeah. This will be awesome. We will play the whole record like front to back and do some extra shit, and like the other bands that will play are fucking amazing. Lucia will come from the UK.
nice.
I mean, like I heard the podcast with you and Jackie like says he considers coming if he's like can make it work with his journey to Africa. I think he said.
South Africa, yeah, he's a South
Yeah,
African. Yep.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, and Joost will come out, and so there will be a bunch of people that listen to this podcast that will be at that show. So we'll definitely have to do like the everything went black Legions Europe division kind of like photo or something.
Absolutely. I was just thinking how cool that would be that we have a photo with like a bunch of us together, and that'd just be a lot of
Sure,
fun,
yeah,
you know. And
dude, we'll make it work.
oh yeah, totally. You know, it's just our tour got postponed till next year, so that's a real drag. And you know, I've already kind of told some people about that. So you know, I had to. There's some other items, work related stuff I had to move around, but now my schedule's clear. Buying the tickets is easy, and the prices are actually still pretty reasonable. So I'm gonna be finalizing my
Uh,
plans like over the next day or so.
Fan fucking tastic. Best news.
Hell yeah.
Thanks, man. That's so cool. I'll look forward to that, dude. Like I don't even know. Like last time was that Roadburn, right, where
Yeah.
you played
Yep.
that like Anvil tour.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
was like a quiet. I was thinking about that this morning actually, as I feverishly woke up this morning. I was like, oh yeah, that's the last time I was in. Well, actually, that's not the last time I was in Europe, but that was the last time I saw you.
Yeah. And let's see. Perfect segue. You know what band you saw that night?
I
Like
do.
even though you were in the midst of chaos of getting your shit together for touring the UK with Black Anvil, what band was that?
Fields of the Nephilim, a
Yeah,
band
man.
that I never ever thought I would ever see live until that day.
And then it's like in one of the most perfect settings you can see them at, because that 013 venue in Tilburg for Roadburn, perfect sound, perfect light. And I remember that like I saw them a bunch of times, but that show was really good.
Yeah, they don't come to the States, man. So you know that's what I envy about people that live in Europe is they get to see bands like that. I know that they do a lot of festival dates and all that over there.
Yeah.
And you know, I got to be honest, man. Now that you mention this, like it's coming back to me that day, and you know, it's been a really long time, man, since I've had a day like that. You know, and I'm
Yeah.
really, you know, remembering how great that was, and that's why I think I'm looking forward to going to Unholy Passion Festival because it's going to be a day similar to that. I think friends and
Yeah.
good music and being in a different place and all that sort of stuff.
And you don't have to perform yourselves. You can just go there to enjoy yourselves.
You know, this is the first time I've been to Europe without being on tour. So this is actually another milestone for me too.
Yeah. Dude, like the older we get, we learn what quality actually is.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So the record that we're going to talk about is a record called Zoon, and technically, it's not a Fields of the Nephilim record. It's a record by Carl McCoy's other band that happened when he left Fields of the Nephilim, called the Nephilim, with an F. So that's like an interesting fact about that I believe gets lost in the annals of time as people look back.
Yeah, it's overlooked because like they broke up in the early '90s, I think after Elysium, and then they reformed later on. And when Morning Sun came out, people were like, "Oh, the music has quite changed since Elysium came out." It's like, yeah, because you're pretty much missing the bridging stone, because the Zoon record is the bridging gap between Elysium and Morning Sun, in my opinion.
So before we talk about the record, let's give a little background for these guys. If anyone out there who isn't quite familiar with Fields of the Nephilim, excuse me, I'm just FYI, guys. I'm under the weather a little bit, so my voice is a little froggy right now. Apologies for that. So the band was founded in 1984 in Stevenage, Hertfordshire, UK, and the first record was Dawn Razor, and that debut was in 1987. And the original lineup featured Carl McCoy on vocals, Peter Yates on guitar, Paul Wright on guitar, Tony Pettit on bass, and Alexander Wright on drums. And McCoy leaves the band from 1991 to 1998, and that's when the Nephilim was active. The remainder of Fields of the Nephilim drafted vocalist Andy Delaney, and they continued on as Rubicon, and they released 2 records, What Starts Ends and Room 101. Have you heard the Rubicon stuff, Ralph?
Actually, no. I was always like meaning to do that, but I've never did. Is it any good?
It's good. It's. I mean, the music is great, you know. And actually, Mike Scandato was the one who told me about them years ago. And Mike, also my co-host over at Necromaniacs, is a huge Fields of the Nephilim fan too. And he told me about Rubicon, and I borrowed the CDs from him back then. That's how long ago this is. This is when we were, we had CDs of everything. And I remember ripping the CDs. putting them on my iPod and being like, yeah, this is pretty cool. But you listen to the music, and though Andy Delaney's a fine vocalist, you want to hear Carl McCoy's like stentorian voice on there, you know?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, that's always the discussion when you have bands with a singer that you know, and they do new stuff with a different singer. It can always go like both ways, but mostly it doesn't work for me. For example, I mean, you and I were both big fans of Alice in Chains. And I know you talked with Randy about Alice in Chains, and also like that he gave praise to the later records with the guitar player of dude, like this hardcore band. Oh man, Southern Lord just put it out. Like the new singer in Alice in Chains used to play Neon Christ, right? He was the guitar player in Neon Christ.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
And yeah, and he's a good vocalist, and he sounds pretty much exactly like Lane Staley, but I think he shouldn't sing his lyrics. You know, like he's like, and that always is a problem for me. And now, for example, I don't know if you're a fan, but I'm not a fan of Power Trip, but like they are a huge band, and now they will put out a new record with a different singer too. I don't know, man.
Yeah, that's I didn't know. I mean, I'm not a fan of Power Trip really. I mean, no disrespect. I just never really got into them, and they're not really the kind of band I would listen to. But that is, I mean, especially when the singer passes away, it's kind of like, I think that's a really good reason to end the band and maybe do something different, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you had the discussion of like on back then on Metal Matters, but like the topic came up on everything Black Now and Then, the Diano versus Dickinson, Iron Maiden stuff. But that was like after one record, and there's this whole legacy. But if your band is founded like Alice in Chains based on the lyrics and vocals of that one guy and he passes away, I don't know, man. I also would say I'll call it quits.
With Alice in Chains, that's the thing. It's like you could even say the same thing about AC/DC, Bon Scott and Brian Johnson.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not giving this like giving this a little bit of a consideration. Is that there's so much riding on this band continuing as far as like
Sure.
people's salaries and crew members' livelihoods and things like that. That you have to keep that in consideration too. But I have to say that I'm going to talk about Alice in Chains because me and Randy both saw them play at Hellfest back a few years ago, and if they had only focused on the new material and had that guy sing, that would be like, okay, cool, it's Alice in Chains. But there's the showbiz aspect of it, which is like playing all the classics. And though that guy's a great vocalist, and I like what he's done in the band, he just doesn't have the pain in his voice, man, and the soul that like Lane Staley had, And I know that Jerry Cantrell does a lot of the vocals too, but give respect where respect is due. That if you're doing the songs that Lane sang a lot on, you have to keep that in mind,
Yeah. There's a video of, I don't know what festival that was, where Phil Anselmo in his long hair junkie face, he sang Wood with Alice in Chains. And that made more sense to me, even though the vocal performance wasn't as good as having this other guy sing that song, because I think he can relate to being a junkie and being miserable.
Yeah. No, I've seen videos of that performance too, by the way.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, the AC/DC thing is like a good example. They've got, I think, pretty much like the discography by now is like 50% with both singers, and there's so much good shit, and you could argue the same thing. I don't know, but like in AC/DC, there's not a lot of pain in the vocals, I think. But like, maybe it's just like that Alice in Chains is such a sentiment subject to me that I'm like indifferent about that. So, but yeah, I see like at least like with Fields and Rubicon, they didn't name it Fields of the Nephilim. So they had like a new name, it's a different band, and then that's fine for me.
Yeah, I felt like they went about it the right way. You know what I mean? And that give them props for that. So how did you discover Fields of the Nephilim? Since we're going back and giving a background of the band, like what was your introduction to the band?
Yeah. Let's see. I have to think back. I think I made it. I explained it on that. For all of you out there who haven't listened to it, Mike and I did a big episode on Fields of the Nephilim.
Right.
And I have to recall, like, where was that? I think it was again on a mixtape of someone that gave it to me. That must have been like that era. I know I was familiar with Sisters of Mercy, and that was because of my French exchange partner in school who gave me that tape with Alice Cooper on the one side and Sisters on the other side. And from there on, like, these French goth kids were like in our city now and then that's where I found out about Cure and Bauhaus and all these bands. And I think through a connection with one of these cats or like someone there gave me a mixtape, I found out about Fields of the Nephilim.
Yeah, I once again, we did an episode on this, but for anyone out there, is we got a bunch of new listeners on board too. I found out about Fields back in the 90s through reading Propaganda magazine, which was this like old school like goth industrial mag. And when I used to work at the Newbury Comics warehouse, they would come through all the time, and I'd be like, "Oh, this looks interesting." There's like Death in June, Coil. I remember even Soundgarden was on the cover of one of the issues, or they were featured in the magazine. And so I read about Fields, and I also was familiar with Sisters of Mercy. And aesthetically, just on the surface, there's like a similarity. You know what I mean? There's like these kind of dark guys with like, sunglasses and, black and white photos and mystery and smoke machines and all that. But when I finally listened to them it was like way different, way more intense, darker. The lyrics were not typical pop lyrics, and McCoy wrote a lot about the occult and chaos magic and Sumerian mythology and the Lovecraftian mythos and stuff that was in line with the kind of things that I was interested in, and it's funny. I look at going back on like post-punk or goth music. Bauhaus were another band that stands out as being more punk. Like they had like a punk vibe within the goth world. And Fields of the Nephilim had like a heavy rock vibe in the goth scene.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There were no drum machines or dance beats or anything like that.
Yeah, from the get-go. I mean, it was like on Dawn Razor, it's pretty straightforward still, I think. Even the sound was a bit more chunky than Sisters ever were. But like on the second and third output, then they had their own shit going. They had their own sound, and it was between these heavy distorted guitars and these clean chorus jangly guitars. And that was always heavier than Sisters of Mercy ever were. And Sisters were like classic, goth people that are like heartbroken, listen to Dead Can Dance and Sisters of Mercy. But like the whole desert image and more ghostly kind of like, I don't know, American approach to things.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
That was their strong suit. I mean, it's like, if you want to watch Herzog's Nosferatu, and then you can listen to Sisters of Mercy. But if you check out like old Western movies, like Italian Western movies, then you will have like more the Fields of the Nephilim vibe. So it was more dirty, grittier, heavier in its way.
I also want to drop. This is going to be a jump, actually, and this is like a concept I've been working with for a while. Another way that I got exposed to these guys was through Richard Stanley's film Hardware, which features a brief cameo of Carl McCoy in the beginning of the film. And I know that Richard Stanley was really close with the band because he produced 2 videos for them. He was like friends with Carl McCoy, and that makes a lot of sense to me because Richard Stanley is also, into chaos magic and the occult and, all this like witchcraft stuff. And I think aesthetically, they kind of borrowed a little bit from each other, maybe, and that once again, this hasn't been verified by any kind of interview or whatever. But Stanley directed Preacher Man and Blue Water, the Fields of the Nephilim videos. And, in the beginning of Hardware, you see Carl McCoy wandering across the desert with it looks like he's walking home from Fields of the Nephilim band practice. He's got his hat and his duster on, like these like crazy glasses and that deserty kind of trip is a lot of Richard Stanley's vibe. You know what I mean? And I think that maybe that went hand in hand with the creation of the image of the band,
Yeah.
And once again, that's just like a wild guess or some kind of educated guess, I guess, on the whole thing.
And the thing is, like, in the time that Fields started out, look at the peers. They all looked like Sisters of Mercy and Bauhaus, but no one looked like Fields of the Nephilim. I mean, they were like pompous heads. If you look at like the old early Sisters of Mercy photos where the guy from the Mission was still in the band.
Oh yeah, mm-hmm.
and then he left to form the Mission. Everybody was rocking hats all the time, and they had like leather jackets on and spiky boots. But the Fields, they looked like a fucking and like you could like take a band photo of them and put like original score by Ennio Morricone on it, and people would say like, oh, what's that Western? I don't know that one. It's like. I mean, they have a song called Preacher Man, and if you read the Preacher comic books, like you could have Fields of Nephilim play alongside, and it just works. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. All right, so the band they have this split, where everyone goes off and does their own thing for a while, and we got Carl McCoy doing the Nephilim, and now that was an even further departure because. That was like a industrial metal record. Like the guitars were like thrash guitars and like there's double bass, double kick drum on some of the songs. The vocals were like more extreme, and it was basically a metal record, right?
It is, yeah.
And I got to be honest with you, the first time I heard it, I didn't really like it that much. Is that interesting?
Yeah, but I can see why, and I think that goes for a lot of fans. And by the time that came out in '96, I guess you were already a fan of Fields of the Nephilim.
Yeah, I was.
And then, so for me, it was like kind of retrospective, because in the phase where I got to know all these bands, I wasn't like I knew of Fields of the Nephilim, but they became more important to me later on. So for me, it was like going through their back catalog by going through the Musikgarage, which is the music garage in Heppenheim, where I come from, going through the secondhand CD bin. And I think the first thing I ever bought there was the, is it Revelation, the double CD?
Oh yeah, yep.
Yeah, that was the first thing I bought, and then it's like, oh, what's this? What's that? And then it's like, oh yeah, like look at just for something called the Nephilim. That's also them. And I'm like, okay, so I bought that back then too, and I was like, oh, this sounds different. But at that time, it must have been around '96, '97. There was this huge wave, like the aftermath of bands that have changed, and we've addressed this topic here a bunch of times, that something had changed between 92 and 94, 95. And I mean, we will talk a bit more about the record before I go to all these bands because I wrote down all the bands from that time that had like weird offshoot projects that all sounded like this industrial thrash kind of way that the Zoon record works. Yeah, well, I'll come to this in a minute. But it has like this, fast palm muted thrash guitars, but then like chorus arpeggios and a lot of double kick and really like this industrial kind of mechanical beats going for it. And it only pretty much has one straight up Fields of the Nephilim song, which is Shine. And then like moments of classic Fields of the Nephilim on Zoon 1 and 2. But the rest is like almost straight up metal.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's Zoon 2, Wake World, that's my favorite song on the record. And that combines, that's kind of like a full bandwidth of all the things that McCoy is capable of. You got like, the intro is like very much like old Fields of the Nephilim. And then it goes into this like almost like, almost like this like kind of Guns N' Roses like guitar thing going on in the middle of the song. And then the ending has this kind of epic, like grandiose like vibe to it,
Yeah, it's a more metal take on the opulence of Elysium, I think, where they had like these long songs and going through different kind of the thing that I tried to do with Otha, to have like long songs that go through the different phases, meandering from one to the next, and that's what this record does too, and that's like pretty much also like an influence that this band has on me and this record. And it can I can also see like when Colin McCoy left the Fields of the Nephilim, and he's like, I assume that he was like, oh dude, like I'm done with the quote unquote gruff Andrew Eldritch image I had, like, because he was always compared to Andrew Eldritch, and his vocal range is so much higher. Like he can do like the clean vocals, the higher ones, he can do the low clean vocals, but he does like actual growls on this record, like to some degree, especially like in Exodus. It almost like the Exodus song now, listening to it again, and that was like, I re-listened to that record for the first time in a while after I listened to the podcast of you and Jackie talking about the contemporary black metal bands.
Right.
And like bands like Guerilla and Panzerfaust and like a lot of these Debo More Morty bands, the more like modern French Eccles, and they have like these parts where they have like chugging double bass and have like the rough vocals, and then it sweeps into these like one guitar plays clean melodies on top of it and goes into spoken lyrics, and that's pretty much exactly what happens on the Exodus, for example.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. This record also, one of the biggest extreme metal bands in the world, Behemoth, covers a song off of this record, Penetration.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense, actually. I I actually wasn't
Totally.
aware of them covering this song until recently. And now when I listen to Behemoth, I hear every song of theirs with aspects of this one record on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and also, do you know Nergal's other band, Me and the Man?
Oh yeah, of course. I do know that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and he actually played songs with Carl McCoy on stage. Like they did Fields of the Nephilim covers together with Carl.
That's great. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that Me and the Man is any good, but
No.
like it's good
Awful.
for him. Yeah.
Yeah, terrible.
Yeah, terrible.
2 records of
Yeah.
just complete garbage, really, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So when McCoy formed this with John Cappuccino Carter, John actually ended up a member of Fields of the Nephilim when they reformed back in '98. So the band, he continued working with Carl. Now Carter was only in the band the Nephilim for about a year, and was replaced with Paul Miles on guitar. Then he was the lineup was rounded out with Simon Rippin on drums, and I'm gonna make it's Cyan, but I think it's Sean Hoochin on bass. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name the right way. It's Cian, Sean Cyan. I'm not sure.
Cyanide. I don't know.
Hoochin.
Hooch.
Maybe that's a French name. I don't know. Jean Houchin. I don't know. Hard to say. But anyway, that's the lineup of the band. And sadly, this band never toured. At least based on my research, they might have played live, but I don't think they ever toured.
Yeah. I don't even know if they played a show. Like I think that was like a one-off thing, like let's do this record and see how it goes. And I must assume that it wasn't quite popular. I'm in that phase in like 96. That was already, again, the aftermath of the things that I want to talk about in a bit, like these pans. And I think, I guess it wasn't successful. And I don't know if Carl like aimed for success. I don't think he ever did with any of his bands. But I assume like they did it and they still like, let's see where this is going. And then like they moved along and then they reformed Fields of the Nephilim and that was just more commercially successful. I don't know, but like I have no recollection of any shows they played.
I have a theory about this as well. And there's a bunch of interviews out there which take place during this period of time of when Zoon came out and then when Fields reformed. And there's an interview, I think it was on French MTV, where Carl was talking about the demise of the Nephilim, and he basically said, they wanted to do it their way, and I wanted to do it my way, meaning referring to touring. I'm sorry, that was in a Zillow interview, and so that once again, it's a little obscure, like why, but I can imagine like McCoy had like his own specific ideas about touring and the way the band should perform, and it might have been just wanting to be in control of the entire show and not being a support for other bands or just doing this, or maybe he wanted to be on the road all the time and the guys in the band didn't want to do it that way. So that's basically it as far as no tours. It's all out there in this one interview that Carl did.
Yeah, I must imagine also like given the history that the Fields of the Nephilim had and the reputation, the looks. I mean, they've got the game. They own it. Like they've got that image that no other band has. And I mean, now look at black metal nowadays. I think Midnight started it with the Black Cloaks, and then Mugwa made it big, and now all the bands are doing it, and they all sound like Mugwa as well.
Yeah, true.
But like no one dared to fuck with the Fields of Nephilim thing. Like of course people rocked hats or shit, but like this they look like they're covered in flour all the time. And I mean, it's just like they've got such a unique thing. So I assume when they played live, like if they thought about playing live the Nephilim, I guess they would have done it differently. Don't you think? Like that Carl had didn't want to aim for a different aesthetic, maybe.
Yeah, well, but also he probably wanted to aim for a different aesthetic, but still, I imagine he wanted to be in control of like the whole thing,
Yeah,
because it's like
sure.
one of the things that I picked up on in doing some of this video research is they were framing them up along with metal bands. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
if the Nephilim were to tour, they would be probably supporting other metal bands. Like, and then it would be
Yeah,
this kind of thing. Okay, you guys get a half an hour set, and you're
yeah,
supporting like Sepultura or something like that. And I don't think
exactly.
like
Yeah,
that probably wasn't what he wanted, how he wanted to present the band. He probably was like, I'd rather do smaller tours where we can control the environment of the stage and do all of our things and play the entire album and not just have a half an hour to our support slot.
yes. And that pretty much leans exactly into the time frame that we're talking about again, the thing I wanted to mention. I mean, we've talked a bunch about it, but like this shift in metal in between 91 and 91, 92 to 94, 95, metal became the most successful it ever was, I think. And it was like bands like Sepultura with their change between Arise and Chaos AD, what they did. And I just like from the top of my head, like I again like early on when I did research, I'm like, okay, so what do we have? We always have like the biggest change. I think the most successful thing was Chaos AD, which off-spawned then bands like Machine Head and Korn coming out and this shit. Um, but you've got like we talked about Faith No More. We did an episode on them. And between Angel, Real Thing in '89 and Angel Dust in '92, the sound completely changed. It
Yes.
was more cineastic, more keyboards, a better production, and that kind of sound they had going. And that's exactly the sound that Fields of the Nephilim that the Nephilim has too. It's like clean bass, like active pickup bass, Ampex stag, like this kind of thing. Clean guitars, like through compressed active guitars. I don't know the keys, and they have like a sound that a lot of bands in that time all of a sudden had. It was also the sound like Fear Factory came out with Soul of a New Machine in '92, and then in '95 they put out Demanufacture, and they pretty much like they brought this industrial metal thing to its most popular form. And seeing that the Nephilim came out in '96, I must assume they were on Metal Blade and Fear Factory were the biggest band in the world at that time. That like they would have been like, okay, so you're going out with Fear Factory and you can play like 30 minutes. Exactly your thesis. I would totally like sign this like on a dotted line that it was that way.
Yeah, and once again, this is all speculation. Like we didn't get a chance to interview Carl about any of this stuff. So yeah,
Yeah, sure.
you
Yeah.
know,
But yeah, like that I mean, I thought about like listing these bands. I had like Tiamat with June Clouds in '92 and Wild Honey in '94.
yeah,
And the Wild Honey was a huge success. And Chaos AD. Then we had Creator. We've talked about them before. Like Coma of Souls '90 was a straight up thrash record. Renewal had like industrial drums and tribal shit, almost like Neurosis. Um, Paradise Lost had Draconian Times and then went to 1 Second and Host, like to almost alternative. Obituary and Complete, '92, one of my first death metal record and my favorite, like probably one of my favorite death metal records. The next one was World Demise, which was almost like a hardcore record when they toured with Sepultura.
right.
And you had bands like Samael with Ceremony of Opposites in '94, and then through Rebellion in '95, and Passage all of a sudden with a drum computer. So industrial was incorporated in the metal world. And like, what were the biggest bands at that time aside from Fear Factory? It was Typo Negative and Nine Inch Nails.
I
Like,
would love to have seen a Typo Negative, the Nephilim tour. That would have been incredible.
oh, and that it would have worked because I assume that Pete Steele or like they would have said like, dude, like we want you to play this and you can play the whole fucking record if you want to, because I'm pretty sure that they like that.
Oh yeah,
But
definitely.
like this melange of you having metal, which is like really well produced, because all of a sudden there's money in metal to be made, so all these bands get gigantic budgets and they incorporate the stuff that they've been listening to anyhow. So I mean, on that, on Demanufacture is a cover of Dog Day Sunrise by the band Head of David. Do you know them?
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's ties to Godflesh. And so like Fear Factory always gave plugs to Killing Joke. Pandemonium, a Killing Joke came out in 94 and pretty much is the blueprint for Demanufacture as well. And also perfect comparison to what the Zoon became. And one of the biggest records in 92, one of my favorites, is Psalm 69 of Ministry. And I would say that if you listen to Pazuzu, Black Rain, that's pretty much a Ministry song with Slayer riffs, or Venus Decomposing. Like there's a lot of Ministry going on as well.
Well, that's good that you mentioned that, because that initially, when I first heard this record, that was my take on it. Was that I'm like, oh man, these guys are just like copying Ministry, you know? And I'm saying that now, looking back, and that's how me in my 20s looked at it, you know. But it was like, but slowly I started really getting into the record, because, you know, like you said, it's like Slayer riffs, Ministry, distorted vocals, like Black Rain specifically, you know, the chorus,
the
part,
drums,
like the drums, everything about it was like very Ministry were like on the top of the world around that period of time, you know.
Yeah,
like they were huge. They were, you know, doing these gigantic tours and everything, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, right now, like they've always been active, and I kind of lost interest after Filth Pig, but I always had respect for Ministry, and now there's this big tour going right now with Nine Inch Nails, Ministry, and Nitzer App in the States, and that's like a killer bill. And I mean, Ministry unfortunately just canceled their European tour because again, like the pre-sales are shit. So I've never seen them. I would have loved to see them, but it's not happening. But yeah, I mean, like again, like Psalm 69 came out in 92, and then like you had like this, it's a weird time. You had like, but also like rap metal happened. And I mean, for you, all of you out there, this here is one installment of like where Mike and I want to talk about important records to us that are kind of like under the radar.
Yeah.
But we also want to do a branch out where we'll talk about genres of music that were on top of the world for a while and have like faded out or fizzled out and are probably not there anymore. And I guess we will do like a crossover, but not like crossover as in leeway or municipal ways, but like the horrible crossover that was like all like Judgment Night and what came after it.
Yeah, that was a valiant attempt at you know, crossing over, but it kind of fell flat. You know, it had its moments, but never really had any longevity. You know, but this record actually, I caught up with this record over the years, and it actually is probably my number one or number two record to go to for when I want to listen to you know, Colin McCoy and Fields of the Nephilim. You know, this record and Elysium are two of my favorite records that he's been involved with. And then when the band reformed, a lot of these tracks ended up becoming part of the Fields of the Nephilim set list.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
You know, like Wake World, Penetration. You know, there's that Ceremonies Live DVD, which a lot of those songs are featured on that.
Yeah. And it's cool because, like, again, later on with Morning Sun, they did stuff that is like a mixture of all that stuff. And now when they play live sets, it doesn't feel forced, because you can have, of course, they play Moonchild and all the other hits, but they also have like the harsh stuff, and the people at these shows, they're into all of that. It's not like people are leaving the room, oh, they're playing Penetration now, or I don't want to hear that. Like, but people are embracing the whole canon of the Colin McCoy work with the word Nephilim in it.
Yeah, just once again going back to that not Hellfest, the Roadburn Fest. I saw Carl backstage, and I just did not have the courage to go and talk to him, man.
Yeah, I remember you took a picture with Tom Warrior, and I think I would have dared to go to Tom Warrior too. but I don't know if I would approach him. Like, I don't know. Like, it's kind of this because there's this mystique around him. I mean, did you see him in costume, or was that like, I don't know, with short hair? I don't even know if he has long hair.
Oh
anymore,
no,
if it's like a wig.
He kind of seems like he dresses that way all the time, with like some sort of like he actually his hair was tied. He had long hair, but his hair was tied back. He just had like he's a sharp fucking guy, man. He just had like some cool slacks on and like an army jacket or some sort of military jacket, you know, and just fucking just like sharp guy, man. You know, like older dude, you know, got his shit together.
Yeah.
Like he just looks great, you know. And I was like, it's cool. I
See?
can go talk to that dude, man. You know.
And just like some, you know, like sometimes when you see people and they were like in a situation where they had like to decide to go one way or the other way, and you just want to say congratulations, you did the right thing, even though they don't care if you say that.
Yeah.
But like seeing Fields of the Nephilim nowadays, and I think I saw them last time a year before the pandemic, so 2019 or something, 2021. No, wait. Oh, dude, time. 2020 was when the pandemic started, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So 2019. And they still own their game, man. They're so good live. They sound good. He has a great voice. And dude, and then like I saw a video of Sisters of Mercy from a festival of this year in broad daylight, and Andrew Eldridge is the worst fucking
he's shot.
Loser.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
He's totally shot, Andrew Eldridge. Yeah.
Horrible. It's like, oh no. Like people went there to buy tickets, and I was like, I don't think you should go. And they were afterwards like, it was such a pathetic shit show. And I'm like, cool. So like you could go up to him and like, see, you won, Carl. Like you outran the other guy.
Yeah, because they got to be about the same age, Carl McCoy and Andrew Eldridge too. You know, they're from their bands are contemporaries of each other. You know.
Yeah, and this is like, it's unbelievable how to see like how one band really like took a break, made the best of it, and like did their chores off, and now they're still this killer band, and the other band are just a fucking joke playing like song. It almost seems like a terrible cover band or like an opening of a furniture store. Like, oh yeah, here's the Brothers of Mercy playing all the hits of Sisters of Mercy.
The Brothers of Mercy. I like that.
Dude, I don't know if that's a thing in the States, but we've got ABCD, the AC/DC tribute band. We've got Uriah Heep cover band, and they're successful playing just covers all the time.
Oh wow.
And it's just like, yeah. So like that's like having a band like the Brothers of Mercy here, or I guess there's a cover band doing Sisters of Mercy that has like some ridiculous name, Sisters of Sunshine. I don't know, like whatever, but like they kind of feel like a cover band by now. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we definitely have cover bands here. Like for example, you know, Drew and Justin from Tombs have They have a band called Engine Head, which is a Motorhead tribute band, basically. You know.
Ah, see, okay, so
yeah, and
do it the same way.
Yeah, you know, it's like, but then there's like, you know, especially out here in New Jersey where I live, there's all kinds of like cheesy places that have like, you know, like Smith's tribute bands, and you know, there's a Cure one. I mean, I don't go to these things, but like, they make money. They probably make more money doing that with that scene than original music, you know. So
sure, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Oh man, I want to try something here.
Okay.
When I thought about this record and that time frame, I mentioned I mentioned a bunch of bands that had like big successful records out, and there were like kind of these side project bands with some of these dudes that fall in the same vein. So like I think we should do a playlist of like Zoon, of course, and then we add to the playlist, we add like bands that are kind of maybe, you know, like influenced on this record. So maybe a track of Pandemonium,
Okay,
or stuff like this, you know, like have like this our take on where the sound comes from. Maybe Head of David, but I don't think Head of David is on Spotify. But so like I have three bands that are kind of like all-star side project bands. I want to name the bands, and I want to see if you know them and know who was in that.
okay.
You want to do that?
Yeah, let's do it. You know.
All right. Okay, the first band that came to mind listening to the Nephilim, Nail Bomb.
Yeah, that's got Max Cavalera and the dude from Fudge Tunnel in it. Yeah,
Right, Alex Newport.
Alex
Yeah, one
Newport.
record, Point Blank, 94. Really good record, still holds up. Also industrial beats, really nasty, really political. And I mean, Cavalera was always a punk, so like good mixture.
Just real quick about Nail Bomb. Ironically, that's probably the biggest record that Alex Newport ever played on.
That's correct.
You
yeah.
know, I mean, Fudge Tunnel. Let's put it this way with Fudge Tunnel. Every record by them has at least 2 killer songs on it. But a lot of it just never really gelled with me, you know, like of an entire album. I don't think I could listen to an entire record by them.
Yeah. There's another band like this. I forgot to put that on the list, but Scorn. I don't know, was also from that. Yeah.
That's on your list. Scorn's on your list.
No, that's not. I forgot that. I just thought about it, and I thought it was like also like British people, but I don't think so. Like I'm not sure, but like I'll put down Scorn. So yeah, okay. Nail Bomb was big. I mean, they also played. What was that fest? Eindhoven. Dynamo, of course. Yeah, they had like this famous. They played Dynamo Fest back then. Okay, second one, Meat Hook Seed.
Yeah, that's Lou from Sick of It All and Shane Embury, right? Or Mitch Harris, or one of the guys from Napalm.
Yeah, Shane Embury and 2 guys from Obituary. It's Donald Tardy and Trevor Perez.
There you go. Okay.
Earache 93 Embedded also has like this mechanical, industrial, noisy thing going. And the last one, probably the biggest supergroup ever to be formed by a German. That as a like little hint, Voodoo Cult.
That I'm unfamiliar with.
Okay, now your socks will be blown off. Okay, so do you know Philip Boa and the Voodoo Cult? And the Voodoo Club. Philip Boa and the Voodoo Club.
No, I don't know that stuff.
It's a German guy who has been in the Gothic scene forever. He's done like weird pop music, and he's always been like playing at the Zillow Festival, Amphi Festival, like this festivals where the Cure and all the dark wave people go to.
Okay.
And he has like some really dark songs. Some is really quaky and weird. And in that phase in 93, 94, he decided he wants to have a metal band. And he's been friends with Waldemar so Richter, who's been a big producer of German metal back then. So he recorded Creator and all these bands.
Okay.
And Philip Boa assembled a super group of people to record 2 records. The one is called, the debut was Jesus Killing Machine in 94, and the same title record in 95. And now, be ready. So Philip Boa sang. Dave Lombardo played drums. Chuck Schuldinger played guitar.
Whoa.
Mila Petrosov, Creator, played guitar. It had like a bunch of other guys. And on the second record, even Jim Martin of Faith No More played guitar.
This is called Voodoo Cult?
Yes, Voodoo Cult.
Okay. All right. This sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's hard. Like I recently got like the 2 CDs. I don't know if there's vinyl of that, but like I got the 2 CDs really cheap. But like both records are also on Spotify. And I don't know if it holds up because he has like this weird kind of way. Like you will hear instantaneously that he's German. And there's a song called Albert is a Hat Banger. Albert is a Hat Banger. Then he always like has this German pronunciation of everything. But he's got fucking Dave Lombardo play drums, and they've got like Chuck Schuldinger playing guitar in some of these tracks, which is insane.
I'm going to add a band to this list too.
Okay.
And, have you heard Blood from the Soul?
No.
All right. Once again, a Shane Embury, Lou Kohler project.
That's the one, because like I think the Me Too that was not Lou Kohler. Blood from the Soul.
Okay. Meat Hook. I think. Hold on a second here. Meat Hook. Let's see this here. Meat Hook. Let's get to the bottom of this right now.
Yeah. Detective Internet is on the work.
Yeah. I'm going through my files here. Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. All right. No, Lou, we misspoke. Lou Kohler is not in Meat Hook Seed. It's Mitch Harris, John Tardy, Trevor Perez, Shane Embury. Shane Embury is the common denominator between these bands. So yeah, but I do know Meat Hook Seed. Okay, all right. Blood from the Soul is the one that has Lou on vocals. Their first album. The first album.
Okay.
Back in 2020, they put out another record with a different guy on vocals.
Okay.
That's like it doesn't sound anything like the first record. Like another hardcore singer was on that record.
Okay. Okay, I'll check it out.
And that record's not as good.
Yeah. Yeah, the the voodoo cult stuff is interesting, and it has this. Yeah, that's what I wanted to mention. Like the if you listen to Pazuzu Black Rain to go back to the Zoon record, like it already starts with like a rolling double bass, but it has this double lead guitar in the middle, like at around 3 minutes. And the first thing that came to mind from the sound and the guitars is like, oh, Divine Intervention. Because like all these bands back then had the sound that Slayer then had with Divine Intervention. And that was kind of like the standard for extreme metal. And like the voodoo cult stuff sounded exactly like this record. Like you can hear instantaneously, it's like, it's these kind of guitars, it's this kind of drum recording. So it really fits into the mold of that time. And it's like, as I said, it's cool. It's kind of weird. I mean, for me, Philip Boa is like a household name, but people here know him. But like that project never made it across the pond because no one really knows him. But I think that Me Took Seed record is fucking A+, man. The artwork with the bag, the baby in the bag is mysterious and spooky. Not like the Belphegor baby that's like chopped into pieces on that first shitty Belphegor record, but like the artworks like that. Like I remember seeing the CD in the shelves. It's like I bought it and I didn't know what it was. And that was a time when I was just like buying records just from the looks of it. And later I found out like, oh, wow, this is one of the Napalm guys and two of Obituary. That's cool. Oh.
Yeah, good stuff, man. Like all kinds of cool music. And that's in the industrial metal thing. It walks the line of being really cheesy and being awesome. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But the bands that we talk about are awesome, these bands.
Yeah. And especially that's why it's so sad that Zoon is not on more people's radars, because people can recall the side project of these famous metal bands in the 90s. I mean, Nailbomb is like every metalhead from that time knows who Nailbomb is. Me Took Seed, not so much. Voodoo Cult is pretty regional here. But like I asked around, like when we played that show yesterday, and like people in my band. So Manu, our drummer in Ulfa and in Ropes of Night, he's like very knowledgeable. And of course he said like, oh yes, I bought the record in a €1 bin, and I remember I was listening to it and thinking this is really like 90s metal, and but it's really cool, and I didn't know it was Fields of the Nephilim. And I'm like, okay, good. Now you know.
Manu has a really severe accent like that.
Yeah. Like a lot of Germans have, because again, our dumb system has everything dubbed on TV, and I mean, Manu is like fluent in talking, but like he has the accent that a lot of people here have, because if you don't like go in voluntarily and listen to stuff in English or watch English shows, you won't get rid of it. But that's why the Dutch, the Swedish, and all these people have like really like the least accent you can have.
Yeah. Well, also the Dutch language is incredibly hard to master too. The sounds that they make, and so I mean, as far as other Europeans go, how many other non-Dutch people can actually speak Dutch like well?
Yeah.
You know, I think a low percentage, and English is like the way that it seems like everyone internationally communicates, you know, or German. German's another very widely spoken language in Europe, I believe too, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is the Romanian language. It's pretty much, I think French is more popular, but it's, I mean, the Romanian languages, they're all intertwined. So like as a German, I can see French texts or Italian or Spanish, and like some words I know because they resemble a word I know. But the Dutch stuff is, I mean, it's a bastard of German, English, and I think a bit of French. So like you can have a sentence and you can see like, okay, this word is a German word, and this is like I think I mentioned it before. There's this, like if you have like these, I don't know, like the bumps in the road that like people place in the street so you don't like drive too fast.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're called trembles. And it's like, also it's pronounced tremble, but it's written like tremble, like shiver, or like the shaking in English. So like it's like a loan translation, because like, okay, when you drive like on top of it, your car will start to tremble. And that's like how they stole that word, I assume, or something. And then before that, you have like a German word, which is like let up, is like pass auf. And there's so much intertwined. So when Dutch people speak, it's like half of the words I understand and half of them I don't. It's weird, but yeah, great people. I love the Dutch.
Oh yeah, Holland is like one of my favorite places to visit, man. Like when I go over there.
Yeah. I mean, I can always just give praise, because like this is the cool thing about Cologne, that like within 45 minutes I'm in the Netherlands if I want to be, and there's so much more chill when it comes to, you know, like censoring of horror, or like they had like this you can like buy marijuana in the coffee shops in decent amounts. They just go about everything more chill. And then like also they have, like as I mentioned on one of our last on the Q&A with me, it's like the Dutch black metal scene right now is just mind-blowing. And like in the 90s with Gorefest, they had one of the best death metal bands to ever grace Europe. Yeah, great country, great people. I always love to play shows there. The venues are badass. Like, I mean, you know, 013.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like there's no comparison to that in Germany. Like the Dutch, they have their venues, like they're the bomb. Yeah.
Well, I think that's it, man, for Zoon. I think we got it covered. And so, you know,
Dude.
everyone check this record out if you're not familiar. And then also check out the rest of Carl McCoy and Fields of the Nephilim's catalog. It's all great music. You know, if you've made it this far into the show, you're definitely interested. So check it out. And then we're going to put together this killer playlist with all this other stuff on it.
Yeah, and maybe also, like when you post it, maybe you link our old episode and the old playlist we did for the Fields thing.
Yes.
And yeah, we will do a new killer playlist with music. If you want to fuck around with metal that is drenched with a bit of industrial, we got you covered.
Well, thanks for listening, everyone.